The mining station orbiting Kepler 442b hummed with the constant vibration of industrial extraction equipment. Commander Sarah Chen walked through the sterile corridors, her boots clicking against the metal flooring as she made her way to the observation deck. 3 months into her assignment as the station's new operations director, she still felt like an outsider among the crew of 47 humans and 12 alien workers. The Zephyrian telepaths were the most unsettling. Their pale blue skin seemed to shimmer under the artificial lighting, and their large, silver eyes held an intelligence that made Sarah uncomfortable. She had read their files extensively before accepting this position. The Zephyrians were valued throughout the galaxy for their ability to read surface thoughts, making them excellent mediators, negotiators, and workplace supervisors. They could detect lies, understand true intentions, and prevent conflicts before they escalated. What the files hadn't prepared her for was how it felt to be around them. Every conversation felt exposed, every private thought potentially visible. Sarah had trained herself to maintain mental discipline, focusing on work-related matters whenever one of the telepaths was nearby. It was exhausting, but necessary. She had secrets that could not be discovered. As she entered the observation deck, Sarah found herself face to face with Kale THYSS, the lead Zephyrian supervisor. His tall, lean frame stood silhouetted against the massive viewport that showed the planet below. Kepler 442b was a desolate world, rich in rare minerals but utterly lifeless. Perfect for mining operations, terrible for human morale. Commander Chen, Kale THYSS said without turning around. His voice carried the melodic quality common to his species, but there was something different in his tone today. I have been waiting for you. Sarah approached cautiously, maintaining her mental barriers. Is there a problem with the extraction teams? No problem with the teams. Kale THYSS finally turned to face her, his silver eyes studying her intently. The problem is with you. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. She forced her expression to remain neutral, though her heart rate spiked. I'm not sure what you mean. Your thoughts, Kale THYSS continued, stepping closer. They are unusual. Most humans think in patterns I can easily read. Emotions, memories, immediate concerns. But you. He paused, tilting his head slightly. You think in layers. Complex structures that seem designed to hide rather than reveal. Sarah's mouth went dry. I'm simply focused on my work. These operations require concentration. Perhaps. Kale THYSS moved to the viewport, pressing one long-fingered hand against the transparent aluminum. But concentration does not explain why your surface thoughts feel artificial. Manufactured. As if you are constantly composing a performance for an audience you know is watching. The accusation hung in the air between them. Sarah knew she had to respond carefully. Too defensive, and she would confirm his suspicions. Too casual, and he might probe deeper. I've always been a private person, she said finally. Some humans are more open to telepathic contact than others. Perhaps I'm simply one of the more resistant types. Kale THYSS turned back to her, and, for a moment, Sarah felt something brush against her mind. It was gentle but insistent, like fingers tracing the edges of a locked door. She reinforced her mental barriers, pushing back against the intrusion. The Zephyrian's eyes widened slightly, and he stepped back. Interesting. You are not merely resistant. You are trained. Sarah's blood ran cold. I don't know what you're talking about. Human minds do not naturally possess such sophisticated defenses. What you just did requires years of practice, specific techniques that are not taught in standard military or corporate training. Kale THYSS circled her slowly, his gaze never leaving her face. Who taught you to shield your thoughts, Commander Chen? The question hung in the recycled air of the observation deck. Outside the viewport, the mining drones continued their endless work, carving away at the planet's surface in pursuit of rare earth elements and exotic matter. Sarah watched them for a moment, buying herself time to think. I studied meditation and mental discipline at the academy, she said. Many officers do. It helps with stress management and decision-making under pressure. The Academy teaches basic mental exercises, HFY replied. What you possess goes far beyond that. Your barriers are not amateur constructions. They are professional-grade defenses, the kind developed by. He paused, his expression shifting to something approaching alarm. The kind developed by intelligence agencies. Sarah felt her carefully constructed world beginning to crumble. She had known this assignment was risky, but the intelligence she needed to gather was too valuable to pass up. The mining operation on Kepler 442b was more than it appeared to be. Hidden beneath the official corporate documents and mineral extraction permits was something that could change the balance of power in this sector of the galaxy. You're letting your imagination run away with you, Sarah said, forcing a laugh. I'm a mining operations coordinator, nothing more. Are you? HFY moved closer again, and this time his mental probe was stronger, more focused. Sarah felt it pressing against her defenses like a hydraulic press, seeking any weakness or crack that might give way under pressure. She held firm, drawing on years of training that officially didn't exist. The techniques had been burned into her memory through months of painful practice, each lesson reinforced with the understanding that discovery meant death. Not just her death, but the deaths of everyone depending on the intelligence she was supposed to gather. HFY stumbled backward as if he had been struck. His silver eyes were wide with shock and something that might have been fear. What are you? He whispered. Sarah knew she was at a crossroads. She could continue the deception, try to convince him that his suspicions were unfounded. But the look in his eyes told her that ship had sailed. He had felt something in her mind, some echo of the truth that had shaken him to his core. Alternatively, she could trust him. It was a massive gamble, but HFY had been nothing but professional during their previous interactions. His personnel file indicated a strong moral compass and a history of protecting those under his supervision. If she was going to trust anyone with the truth, it would have to be someone like him. The decision was made for her when alarms began blaring throughout the station. Alert! Alert! Unscheduled vessel approaching. All personnel to emergency stations. Alert! Alert! Sarah and HFY both turned toward the viewport. In the distance, barely visible against the starfield, a dark shape was moving toward the station. It was too far away to make out details, but Sarah's enhanced vision implants identified it immediately. It was a hegemony destroyer. Military grade, heavily armed, and definitely not on any scheduled arrival manifest. Commander, HFY said, his voice tight with concern, what is that ship doing here? Sarah's mind raced. The hegemony was the ruling coalition that governed this sector of space. They were technically allies of humanity, but their interpretation of alliance was more accurately described as barely tolerated subjugation. Humans were considered a useful but inferior species, capable of certain types of work but requiring constant supervision and guidance from their more enlightened alien betters. The mining operation on Kepler 442b was a joint venture, with human labor and expertise guided by alien oversight. It was supposed to be a model of interspecies cooperation. But Sarah knew the truth hidden beneath the corporate propaganda. I don't know, she lied, though her enhanced implants were already analyzing the ship's configuration and cross-referencing it with intelligence databases. We should get to the command center. They moved quickly through the station's corridors, passing other crew members who were hurrying to their emergency positions. Sarah's mind was working furiously, trying to calculate how much time she had before the situation became unsalvageable. The command center was a hive of activity when they arrived. Captain Rodriguez, the station's commanding officer, was coordinating with traffic control while various department heads monitored their systems. The main screen showed the approaching destroyer in much clearer detail. Status report, Sarah called out as she entered. Unscheduled hegemony vessel, designation Sovereign's Will, Rodriguez replied without taking his eyes off the screen. They're not responding to our hails, and they haven't filed any approach vectors with station control. Sarah studied the ship's approach pattern. It was coming in fast and direct, with none of the careful maneuvering typical of a routine inspection or diplomatic visit. This was either a combat approach or an emergency. Weapon status, she asked. Passive scans show full combat readiness, the security chief reported. Shields up, weapons powered but not locked on target. Yet, Sarah thought grimly. They weren't locked on target yet. Commander Chen, KLTHYSS appeared at her elbow, his voice barely above a whisper. I am reading elevated stress patterns from the entire bridge crew. Fear, confusion, and, from you. He paused, his silver eyes studying her intently. Resignation. As if you were expecting this. Sarah cursed internally. She had let her guard down in the face of immediate danger, and the telepath had caught a glimpse of her true emotional state. She was expecting this because she knew what the mining operation was really about, and she knew that discovery was always a possibility. I'm concerned about an unscheduled military vessel appearing without warning, she said carefully. Anyone in my position would be. Perhaps. But, your thoughts suggest a deeper knowledge of why they might be here. Before Sarah could respond, the communication system crackled to life. Mining Station Kepler 7, this is Commander Vrextai of the Hegemony vessel Sovereign's Will. Prepare to receive a boarding party for immediate inspection of your facilities. Any resistance will be considered an act of rebellion against the Hegemony Council. The command center fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. Sarah felt every eye in the room turn toward Captain Rodriguez, waiting for orders. But, she knew that Rodriguez was out of his depth. He was a good man and a competent administrator, but he had no idea what was really happening on his station. Captain, Sarah said quietly, I need to speak with you privately. Rodriguez looked at her with a mixture of confusion and gratitude. He was clearly hoping that his operations director had some insight into the situation. KLTHYSS, Sarah continued, you should come as well. The Zephyrian's eyes narrowed. Why me specifically? Because, Sarah said, making a decision that would either save them all or doom them completely, you already know I'm not who I claim to be. And, in about 10 minutes, that's going to become everyone's problem. They moved to Rodriguez's private office adjacent to the command center. As soon as the door sealed behind them, Sarah activated the privacy shield that would prevent electronic surveillance. She paused, looking at both men, knowing that the words she was about to speak would change everything. My name is not Sarah Chan, she began. I am Agent Phoenix of Human Intelligence Division. I have been operating under deep cover for the past 8 months, investigating illegal activities being conducted at this mining facility under the cover of legitimate operations. Rodriguez sank into his chair as if his legs had given out. What illegal activities? This is a mineral extraction operation. Everything we do here is regulated and monitored. The mineral extraction is real, Sarah confirmed. But, it's not the primary purpose of this facility. Captain, do you know what's being mined in the deep shafts of Level 7? Rare earth elements. Platinum group metals. Standard stuff for advanced manufacturing. Sarah shook her head. Level 7 is mining quantum-stable matter. Specifically, matter that has been artificially enhanced with zero-point energy manipulation. It's a technology that the hegemony has classified as restricted to member species of a certain development level. Humanity is not considered to have reached that development level, KLTHYSS said softly, understanding dawning in his silver eyes. Exactly. The hegemony has been using human labor to extract and process materials that they then claim as their own production. It's a violation of at least 17 interstellar treaties, and it's being done without the knowledge or consent of the human colonial government. Rodriguez ran a hand through his graying hair. But, why? Why use human workers for something so sensitive? Because humans are expendable, Sarah said bluntly. If the operation is discovered, the hegemony can claim it was unauthorized human activity. They sacrifice this facility, blame rogue human elements, and walk away clean while 47 human lives disappear into hegemony detention centers. The implications of her words settled over the room like a shroud. Outside, they could hear the activity in the command center increasing in urgency as the destroyer drew closer. The ship out there, HFY said, they are here because they know you have discovered the truth. Sarah nodded grimly. My cover was blown 3 days ago when I transmitted a data burst to human intelligence. I thought I had more time before they could mount a response, but apparently I was wrong. So what happens now? Rodriguez asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah moved to the viewport in the office, looking out at the approaching destroyer. Now we have a choice. We can surrender, allow them to board, and hope they decide to settle for arresting me and leaving the rest of you alone. Or, KLTHYSS prompted. Or we fight. But, you need to understand what that means. This isn't a mining station, Captain. It never was. The Human Intelligence Division has been using this facility as a front for a much larger operation. Every piece of equipment, every system, every defensive measure has been designed and installed with the possibility of exactly this situation in mind. Rodriguez stared at her in disbelief. You're saying this entire facility is some kind of military installation? I'm saying that the mining operation is real, but it's also been the perfect cover for building something much more significant. The quantum stable matter isn't just being extracted, Captain. It's been processed and weaponized. This station has enough firepower to take on a hegemony destroyer and win. The silence that followed was deafening. Through the office's sound dampening, they could hear muffled alarms and the voices of crew members preparing for boarding procedures they didn't understand. KLTHYSS spoke first. You are asking us to commit an act of war against the hegemony. I'm asking you to defend yourselves against beings who see you as nothing more than useful animals, Sarah replied. The hegemony has been exploiting humanity for decades, using our labor and resources while treating us as second-class citizens in our own colonies. This facility represents proof of their illegal activities and the technology to actually do something about it. But the cost, Rodriguez said weakly. If we fight and lose, they'll destroy every human colony in this sector as retaliation. If we surrender, Sarah countered, they'll destroy this facility anyway to eliminate the evidence, and then they'll continue exploiting human colonies throughout the galaxy. The only difference is whether humanity fights back or goes quietly into subjugation. KLTHYSS had been silent during this exchange, his silver eyes moving between Sarah and Rodriguez. Finally, he spoke. There is something else. Something you have not told us. Sarah met his gaze steadily. What makes you think that? Because when I touched your mind earlier, I felt not just training and discipline. I felt hope. Desperate, carefully guarded hope. The kind of hope someone feels when they know something that could change everything. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, weighing her options. Then, she made her final gamble. This isn't just about one mining facility or one illegal operation, she said slowly. Human intelligence has been gathering evidence of hegemony violations throughout this sector for the past 5 years. We've documented systematic exploitation, treaty violations, and worse. But we needed proof that couldn't be dismissed or explained away. And you found it here, Rodriguez said. We found it here. But, more than that, we found the means to act on it. The quantum stable matter being processed at this facility isn't just for weapons. It's the key component for a new type of faster-than-light communication system. One that can't be intercepted or jammed by hegemony technology. The implications hit both men simultaneously. Rodriguez leaned forward in his chair, while KLTHYSS took a step closer to Sarah. You're talking about a communication network that could coordinate human resistance across multiple star systems, the Zephyrian said. I'm talking about the end of human subjugation, Sarah replied. The technology exists. The evidence exists. The only question is whether we're brave enough to use them. The destroyer Sovereign's will was now close enough that its hull details were visible on the command center screens. Sarah could see the boarding shuttles being prepared for launch, the weapon systems tracking the mining station, the shields shimmering with contained energy. They'll be here in less than 10 minutes, she said. I need an answer. Do we surrender and hope for mercy from beings who have never shown us any? Or do we send a message that will be heard in every human colony across the galaxy? Rodriguez looked at KLTHYSS, then, back at Sarah. When he spoke, his voice was stronger than it had been since the crisis began. What do you need from us? Sarah felt a surge of relief at Rodriguez's words, but there was no time to savor the moment. The destroyer was closing fast, and they had perhaps 8 minutes before the boarding shuttles reached the station. First, we need to secure the station, Sarah said, moving toward the command center. Every crew member needs to know what's really happening and what we're fighting for. No half-truths, no sugarcoating. They deserve to know what they're risking their lives for. And if some of them refuse to fight? Rodriguez asked as they walked. Then, they go to the evacuation pods and we launch them toward the planet's surface. Anyone who doesn't want to be part of this gets a chance to survive. Sarah's voice was grim. But they can't contact the destroyer. Once we commit to this course, there's no going back. They entered the command center, and Sarah immediately moved to the main communication console. She activated the station-wide intercom system, knowing that her next words would determine the fate of everyone aboard. Attention all crew members, this is Commander Chen. I need you to stop what you're doing and listen carefully to what I'm about to tell you. Your lives depend on understanding every word. Throughout the station, 47 human workers and 12 Zephyrian supervisors stopped their activities and turned toward the nearest communication panel. The Hegemony destroyer approaching our station is not here for a routine inspection. They are here to arrest me and destroy this facility to eliminate evidence of illegal operations that have been conducted here without your knowledge. Sarah could see the shock registering on the faces of the command center crew. She pressed on, knowing she had to get through the full explanation before anyone could interrupt or panic. For the past 8 months, I have been operating undercover as an agent of Human Intelligence Division. The mining operation here is real, but it has also been used as a front for gathering evidence of systematic hegemony violations of interstellar law. The quantum-stable matter being extracted from Level 7 is technology that humanity is officially prohibited from accessing or using. She paused, letting that information sink in before continuing. The hegemony has been using human labor to extract materials they then claim as their own production, while denying humanity access to the same technology. This is a violation of the Kepler Accords, the Proxima Treaty, and at least 15 other interstellar agreements. More importantly, it's part of a pattern of exploitation that has kept humanity in a subordinate position throughout the galaxy. Through the command center's internal sensors, Sarah could see crew members throughout the station gathering around communication panels, their faces showing a mixture of confusion, anger, and fear. You have a choice to make, and you have approximately 6 minutes to make it. You can evacuate to the escape pods and hope the hegemony allows you to survive as witnesses to their illegal operation. Or you can stay and fight for the future of human independence. Chief Engineer Martinez stepped forward from his console. Commander, what exactly are you asking us to fight with? This is a mining station, not a battleship. Sarah had been waiting for that question. She moved to the tactical display and activated a series of systems that had been hidden beneath layers of civilian mining software. The main screen flickered, and suddenly, the station's true capabilities were revealed. Weapon systems that had been disguised as or processors came online. Shield generators that had been hidden as atmospheric processors activated. Point defense systems emerged from what had appeared to be communication arrays. The collective gasp from the command center crew was audible throughout the room. This facility was designed from the beginning to serve dual purposes, Sarah explained. Every piece of equipment, every system modification, was planned and installed to give us the capability to defend ourselves if this day came. We are not helpless. Holy Mother of... Martinez whispered, staring at the tactical display. These are military-grade systems. Some of this tech is more advanced than what I've seen on hegemony ships. The quantum-stable matter we've been processing isn't just being shipped off station, Sarah continued. It's been incorporated into our defensive systems, our weapons, our shields. This station can match a hegemony destroyer weapon for weapon. KLTHYSS moved to stand beside her at the tactical console. You said this was about more than one facility. What exactly is the larger plan? Sarah activated another display, this one showing a star chart of the local sector. Red dots appeared at various locations, each one pulsing with a soft light. There are 17 other facilities like this one throughout human space. Each one disguised as a civilian operation, each one gathering evidence and building defensive capabilities. If we fight here and now, we send a signal to all of them. The network activates, the evidence gets transmitted to every major power in the galaxy, and humanity stops being anyone's junior partner. The implications were staggering. Rodriguez sank into the captain's chair, staring at the star chart. You're talking about a coordinated uprising across multiple star systems. I'm talking about humanity standing up and demanding the respect we deserve, Sarah replied. We've been patient. We've been diplomatic. We've played by their rules and accepted their limitations. And where has it gotten us? We're still treated as useful primitives who need constant supervision. Security Chief Thompson looked up from his console. Boarding shuttles have launched from the destroyer. Estimated time to docking Bay Alpha is 4 minutes 30 seconds. Sarah turned back to the intercom. All crew members, you now know the truth about this facility and the choice before us. If you want to evacuate, report to evacuation stations immediately. If you're staying to fight, report to battle stations and prepare for combat operations. She closed the channel and turned to face the command center crew. What's it going to be? The response was immediate and overwhelming. Throughout the station, crew members began moving toward battle stations. A few headed for the evacuation pods, but the vast majority were choosing to stay and fight. Martinez was already at his engineering console, bringing the hidden weapons systems online. All defensive systems operational. Shields at full power. Weapons charging. Thompson activated the security protocols that would seal the station against boarding attempts. Internal defenses are active. If they get aboard, they'll have to fight for every corridor. Sarah felt a hand on her shoulder and turned to find HFY standing beside her, his silver eyes bright with something she had never seen before in a Zephyrian. My people, he said quietly, we have felt the thoughts of every hegemony official who has visited this station. The contempt they feel for humanity, the casual cruelty with which they discuss your species. We have remained silent because we believed it was not our place to interfere. He paused, looking at the tactical display showing the approaching boarding shuttles. But, you have shown us something we did not expect to see. Humans who refuse to accept subjugation. Humans who are willing to fight for their freedom despite overwhelming odds. Perhaps it is time for the Zephyrians to choose a side. Sarah stared at him in amazement. Are you saying what I think you're saying? KLTHYSS moved to the communication console and activated a special channel that Sarah hadn't known existed. He spoke in the melodic Zephyrian language, his words carrying an urgency that needed no translation. Responses came back immediately from the other 11 Zephyrian workers throughout the station. The conversation was brief but intense. My colleagues and I have made our decision, KLTHYSS announced. We stand with humanity. The tactical display chimed with an incoming message from the destroyer. Commander Vrextai's image appeared on the main screen, his reptilian features twisted with impatience. Mining Station Kepler-7, you will lower your shields and prepare for immediate boarding. Any delay will be considered resistance. Sarah moved to the communication console and opened a response channel. When she spoke, her voice carried across both the station and to the destroyer. Commander Vrextai, this is Agent Phoenix of Human Intelligence Division. Your illegal operation on this station has been exposed. We have evidence of systematic violations of interstellar law, and that evidence is being transmitted to every major power in the galaxy as we speak. The hegemony commander's eyes widened with surprise, then narrowed with anger. You are in violation of colonial regulations and hegemony authority. Surrender immediately or face the consequences. The only violation here is yours, Sarah replied. You've been using human labor to extract materials that you then deny us access to. You've been treating sovereign human colonies as sources of cheap labor while claiming to be our allies. That ends today. You cannot fight a hegemony destroyer with a mining station, Rextai snarled. You will be destroyed, and your rebellion will serve as an example to any other humans who think to defy our authority. Sarah smiled grimly. Commander, let me show you what a mining station can do when it's been designed by humans who refuse to accept limitations. She nodded to Martinez, who activated the station's true weapons systems. The quantum-stable matter that had been extracted and processed over 8 months of operations had been incorporated into every major system on the station. The shield generators could now absorb and redistribute energy at efficiency levels that surpassed anything in the known galaxy. The weapons systems could focus quantum energy into beams that could cut through any known armor. Most importantly, the communication array could now transmit messages faster than light across distances that had previously required relay stations. The destroyer sovereigns will suddenly found itself facing not a helpless mining station, but a fortress that outgunned it in every category that mattered. Impossible, Rextai breathed, staring at his tactical displays. Those energy readings, no human facility should possess such capabilities. You're right, Sarah replied. No human facility should need such capabilities. But, when you treat an entire species as expendable labor, sometimes that species decides to defend itself. The boarding shuttles were now only 90 seconds from docking. Sarah turned to the command center crew, seeing determination mixed with fear on their faces. Remember, she said, this isn't just about us. Every human colony in the galaxy is watching what happens here. If we show that resistance is possible, that humanity doesn't have to accept second-class status, others will follow. Thompson looked up from his console. I'm reading energy spikes from the destroyer. They're preparing to open fire. Shield status? Sarah asked. Full power and holding, Martinez reported. Our quantum-stable matter enhancement is working perfectly. Their weapons shouldn't be able to penetrate our defenses. And our weapons? Charged and ready. We have targeting locks on their critical systems. Sarah took a deep breath, knowing that her next order would start a war that could spread across the galaxy. But she also knew that sometimes war was the price of freedom. Fire, she said quietly. The station's quantum-enhanced weapons lanced out across the space between the two vessels. The beam struck the destroyer's shields with devastating effect, causing cascading failures throughout their defensive systems. On the main screen, they could see the hegemony vessel reeling from the impact. Rextai was shouting orders to his crew, clearly stunned by the power of the station's weapons. Return fire, he commanded. The destroyer's weapons struck the station's shields, but the quantum-stable matter enhancement absorbed and redistributed the energy harmlessly. If anything, the shields actually grew stronger from the attack. Impossible, Rextai repeated, his voice now tinged with fear. Your shields are strengthening under fire. That technology doesn't exist. It does now, Sarah replied. And every human facility in this sector has it. As if summoned by her words, the space around Kepler 442b suddenly filled with new contacts. Ships were dropping out of faster-than-light travel, their signatures marking them as vessels from other human colonies throughout the sector. Sarah smiled as she recognized the configuration. These weren't random ships responding to a distress call. These were the other facilities in the network, the 17 installations that had been preparing for this moment just as Kepler 7 had been. Attention hegemony vessel sovereigns will, came a transmission from the lead ship. This is Captain Morrison of the Human Defense Force vessel Terra's Pride. You are ordered to stand down immediately and prepare to be boarded for inspection of your activities in this system. Rextai's image flickered as he divided his attention between multiple threats. This is an internal colonial matter. The hegemony does not recognize any human military authority. Then, you're about to get an education, Morrison replied. We have evidence of illegal mining operations, treaty violations, and the use of forced labor. You're under arrest, Commander. The tactical display now showed 18 human vessels surrounding the single hegemony destroyer. Each ship bore the same quantum-stable matter enhancements that protected the mining station, making them more than a match for any hegemony vessel. But Sarah knew this was just the beginning. The real test would come when the Hegemony Council learned what had happened here and decided how to respond. HFY approached her console, his silver eyes bright with an emotion she couldn't identify. Agent Phoenix, I am receiving telepathic communications from my people throughout the sector. The Zephyrians have made a decision. What kind of decision? We choose to stand with humanity. For too long, we have remained neutral while watching the hegemony abuse their power. Your species has shown us what courage looks like. We will not forget that lesson. The implications were staggering. The Zephyrians were one of the most respected species in the galaxy, their telepathic abilities making them valuable allies and dangerous enemies. Their support could shift the balance of power throughout the sector. On the main screen, Vrextai's destroyer was now surrounded and outgunned. His boarding shuttles had been forced to return to his ship without completing their mission. For the first time in hegemony history, a human facility had successfully resisted their authority. This is not over, Vrextai transmitted, his voice filled with rage. The Council will respond to this rebellion with overwhelming force. You have doomed your entire species. Sarah looked around the command center, seeing the faces of the crew who had chosen to fight for their freedom. Then, she looked at the tactical display, showing the fleet of human ships that had answered the call to resistance. Maybe, she replied. But, we've also shown the galaxy that humanity won't be pushed around anymore. And, sometimes, that's worth the risk. The destroyer sovereigns will power down its weapons and began moving away from the station, clearly recognizing that it was vastly outgunned. But Sarah knew this was just the first move in a much larger game. The war for human independence had begun. The aftermath of the confrontation brought a strange calm to mining station Kepler 7. For the first time in months, Sarah felt like she could breathe freely. The hegemony destroyer had withdrawn to a safe distance, clearly outgunned and uncertain how to proceed. The fleet of human vessels maintained a protective perimeter around the station, their crews coordinating with practiced efficiency that spoke of long preparation for this moment. But Sarah knew the calm wouldn't last. Within hours, word of the incident would reach the Hegemony Council, and their response would be swift and brutal. She had perhaps 12 hours to prepare for a counterattack that would make the destroyer's arrival look like a diplomatic visit. Status report, she called out to the command center crew. All systems optimal, Martinez reported. The quantum-stable matter integration is performing better than projected. Shield efficiency is up 18% from baseline, and our weapons are running cool despite the engagement. Thompson looked up from his security console. Internal scans show no damage from their attempted boarding. All crew members are accounted for, and morale is. He paused, checking his readings again. Actually, morale is higher than I've ever recorded. People are excited. Sarah wasn't surprised. For the first time in their lives, these crew members had seen humanity stand up to the galaxy's dominant power and win. It was intoxicating, but also dangerous. Overconfidence could get them all killed. What about casualties? She asked. None, Rodriguez reported, still looking somewhat dazed by the day's events. We faced down a hegemony destroyer without losing a single person. I'm not sure I entirely believe it. KLTHYSS approached Sarah's station, his expression thoughtful. Agent Phoenix, I have been monitoring communications from my people throughout the sector. The news of our success here is spreading rapidly. More importantly, other species are beginning to take notice. What kind of notice? The Altarians have issued a statement questioning hegemony mining practices in their territory. The Vegan Confederacy has announced they will be conducting their own investigation into colonial labor agreements. Even some hegemony member species are expressing concern. Sarah felt a surge of hope. This was exactly what human intelligence had been hoping for. The evidence gathered at facilities like Kepler 7 wasn't just about human grievances. It documented a pattern of exploitation and treaty violations that affected multiple species throughout the galaxy. How long before the hegemony responds? Rodriguez asked. Sarah checked her tactical displays, analyzing the communications patterns from known hegemony installations. Based on their usual reaction time and the distance to their nearest major base, I'd estimate 8 to 10 hours before they can mount a significant counterattack. And, when they do? They'll come with everything they have in the sector. Multiple destroyers, possibly a dreadnought. They can't allow this rebellion to succeed, or it will spread to every human colony in the galaxy. Martinez looked up from his engineering console. Can we hold against that kind of force? Alone? No. Sarah activated the strategic display, showing the positions of the other facilities in the network. But, we're not alone. Every installation in the network has been preparing for this day. Together, we have enough firepower to make the hegemony think twice about their tactics. Captain Morrison's voice crackled over the communication system. Agent Phoenix, this is Terra's Pride. We need to discuss coordination for the next phase. Sarah opened a secure channel. Go ahead, Captain. We've received confirmation from all 17 network facilities. The quantum-stable matter has been successfully integrated into defensive systems across the board. More importantly, the evidence packages have been transmitted to every major government in the galaxy. What kind of response are we getting? Mixed, but encouraging. The Centauri Republic has called for an emergency session of the Galactic Trade Commission. The Andromedan Alliance is demanding a full investigation into hegemony colonial practices. Even some internal hegemony members are asking uncomfortable questions. Sarah felt another surge of hope, but tempered it with caution. Political maneuvering was one thing, actual support was another. Any military backing? That's complicated, Morrison admitted. No one wants to be seen as supporting human rebellion against lawful authority. But several governments have announced they'll be conducting routine patrols in systems where network facilities are located. Patrols with significant firepower. It was better than nothing, but Sarah knew they couldn't count on outside help when the hegemony response came. They would have to prove they could defend themselves before anyone would risk supporting them openly. Captain, what's our supply situation across the network? Better than expected. The quantum-stable matter processing has given us manufacturing capabilities that rival anything in hegemony space. We can produce ammunition, spare parts, even entire weapon systems if needed. Sarah nodded, then turned to address the command center crew. All right, people. We have approximately 8 hours to prepare for the real fight. The destroyer was just a probe. When they come back, it will be with enough firepower to sterilize this entire system. What do you need us to do? Rodriguez asked. First, we need to evacuate all non-essential personnel. Anyone who isn't directly involved in combat operations needs to be on the escape pods and away from the station within the next 2 hours. How many people are we talking about? Thompson asked. Sarah checked the crew manifest. 37 humans and 8 Zephyrians should evacuate. That leaves 22 of us to operate the station's combat systems. I volunteer to stay, came a voice from the back of the command center. Sarah turned to see Dr. Elena Vasquez, the station's chief medical officer. If there are wounded, you'll need medical support. Elena, this isn't your fight, Rodriguez said gently. With respect, Captain, yes it is. I've seen the medical records of workers from other hegemony operations. The accidents, the exposure to dangerous materials, the complete lack of proper safety protocols. They treat us like we're expendable because they believe we are expendable. If we don't fight that attitude here and now, it will never change. Her words sparked a chorus of agreement from other crew members. One by one, people stepped forward to volunteer for combat duty. Martinez, Thompson, and Rodriguez, of course, but also technicians, miners, and support staff who had no military training but plenty of determination. KLTHYSS moved to the center of the group. My people and I will also remain. We have telepathic abilities that could prove useful in combat situations. KLTHYSS, the Zephyrians don't have to be part of this, Sarah said.
This started as a human problem.
No, the tall alien replied firmly. This started as a problem of justice and freedom.
Those are not human concepts. They are universal ones.
Besides, he added with something that might have been a smile, someone needs to keep reading minds to make sure the hegemony doesn't have any surprises planned. Within 2 hours, the evacuation was complete. 22 humans and, for Zephyrians remained aboard the station, along with whatever destiny the next few hours would bring. The escape pods had been launched toward the planet's surface, carrying the evacuated crew members to safety in underground shelters that had been prepared months ago.
Sarah stood in the observation deck, watching the pod trails fade into the planet's atmosphere.
Outside, the fleet of human ships maintained their defensive positions, their quantum-enhanced hulls gleaming in the light of the system's star.
Agent Phoenix, came a voice behind her.
She turned to find KLTHYSS approaching, his silver eyes reflecting the starlight from the viewport.
Just Sarah now, she said. The cover identity doesn't seem necessary anymore. Sarah, then.
I wanted to speak with you about what I sensed earlier, when I first touched your mind.
Sarah tensed slightly. What about it?
I felt something beyond just training and determination. There was a specific memory, carefully hidden but intensely powerful.
A memory that drives everything you have done here.
Sarah was quiet for a long moment, then moved to the viewport. In the distance, she could see the planet where her parents had died 15 years ago, in what had been officially recorded as a mining accident. My parents were part of the first wave of human colonists in this sector, she said finally. They came here believing in the promise of partnership with the hegemony, of humanity taking its place among the galactic community as equals.
But it didn't work out that way.
They were assigned to a mining operation on Kepler 438c. Officially, it was a joint venture, with humans providing labor and the hegemony providing technology and expertise.
In reality, it was forced labor disguised as cooperation. Sarah's reflection in the viewport looked older than her actual age, worn down by years of carrying secrets and planning revenge.
The accident that killed them wasn't an accident, she continued. They had discovered that the hegemony was using human workers to extract materials for weapons production. When they tried to report it through official channels, their supervisor decided they were a security risk. KLTHYSS stepped beside her at the viewport. And, you have spent 15 years preparing to make them pay for that decision. I've spent 15 years gathering evidence and building the capabilities to ensure it never happens again.
My parents died believing that humans would always be junior partners in the galaxy. I intend to prove them wrong.
The revenge aspect of your motivation is understandable, KLTHYSS said carefully. But, revenge can cloud judgment.
Are you certain your decisions today are based on what's best for humanity, rather than what satisfies your need for vengeance? Sarah considered the question seriously.
It was something she had asked herself many times over the years. 6 months ago, I would have said both motivations led to the same actions, she admitted. But, today I saw the faces of the crew when they chose to stay and fight. I saw the hope in their eyes when they realized humanity could stand up to the hegemony and win.
That's not about revenge.
That's about giving an entire species a future worth having.
Good, KLTHYSS said simply. Because the next few hours will test every motivation you possess.
As if summoned by his words, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Sarah and KLTHYSS rushed to the command center, where Rodriguez was coordinating with the defensive fleet.
Report, Sarah called out as she entered. Multiple contacts dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the system's edge, Thompson announced. Initial count is 12 vessels, with more arriving every minute. The main tactical display showed the incoming ships.
Sarah's enhanced implants identified them immediately, 4 destroyers, 2 heavy cruisers, and a hegemony dreadnought. It was enough firepower to reduce the entire station to atoms.
Estimated time to weapons range? Sarah asked.
47 minutes at current speed, Martinez replied.
Sarah activated the fleet communication channel. All ships, this is Agent Phoenix. The hegemony response force is larger than anticipated. Are all vessels ready for sustained combat operations?
Captain Morrison's voice came back immediately.
Terrace Pride standing by. All network facilities report combat ready. One by one, the other captains reported in.
17 ships, each enhanced with quantum-stable matter technology, each commanded by crews who had spent months preparing for this moment.
Agent Phoenix, came a new voice over the communication system.
Sarah didn't recognize the speaker, but the voice carried unmistakable authority.
This is Admiral Garrett Hayes, Human Defense Force.
I'm aboard the heavy cruiser Defiant, approximately 6 hours out from your position. Sarah felt her pulse quicken. Admiral Hayes was a legend in human space, one of the few military officers who had consistently argued for stronger human independence. Admiral, we weren't expecting official military support.
You're not getting it, Hayes replied bluntly.
Officially, I'm conducting routine patrol operations in this system.
Unofficially, I happen to bring along most of the Third Fleet. Funny how these scheduling conflicts work out.
Sarah checked her tactical displays. The Third Fleet consisted of 28 ships, including 2 dreadnoughts that could match anything the hegemony had in the sector.
Admiral, your arrival time puts you well after the engagement begins.
Then, you'll have to hold the line until we get there.
Can you do it? Sarah looked around the command center at the faces of her crew. Martinez at his engineering console, making final adjustments to their weapon systems.
Thompson coordinating with security teams throughout the station.
Rodriguez reviewing damage control protocols. HFY monitoring hegemony communications for any tactical intelligence. These people had chosen to risk everything for the chance at human independence. They deserved an honest answer.
Yes, sir, Sarah replied.
We can hold the line. Good. Hayes out.
The communication channel closed, leaving the command center in relative quiet except for the constant hum of the station's systems. Outside, the hegemony fleet continued its approach, growing larger on the tactical displays with each passing minute.
Sarah, KLTHYSS said quietly, I'm reading the surface thoughts of the hegemony commander.
Admiral Torvin Kai, one of their most experienced military leaders.
He's confident this will be a quick engagement. What's he basing that confidence on? He believes human resistance was only possible because of the element of surprise.
In his mind, superior numbers and firepower will quickly end what he sees as a minor colonial uprising.
Sarah smiled grimly. Then, he's about to learn why underestimating humans is a mistake.
She activated the station-wide communication system.
All hands, this is Agent Phoenix.
In approximately 30 minutes, we're going to face the largest hegemony force ever assembled against a human facility. They're coming here to destroy us and everything we've built, to make an example that will keep humanity in subjugation for generations to come. Throughout the station, the remaining crew members stopped what they were doing and listened. But, they've made one critical error in their calculations. They think they're facing a mining station defended by primitive humans using stolen technology. What they're actually facing is something that has never existed before in the galaxy, humans who refuse to accept limitations. Sarah paused, looking at the tactical display showing both the approaching hegemony fleet and the defensive positions of the human ships.
Today, we're not just fighting for this station or these facilities. We're fighting for the right of humanity to stand as equals in the galaxy. We're fighting for the principle that no species should be treated as expendable labor.
And, we're fighting to prove that courage and determination can overcome any technological advantage.
She took a deep breath, knowing that her next words would echo through human space for generations to come. This is our moment. This is when humanity stops asking for respect and starts demanding it. All hands to battle stations. Let's show them what humans can do. The battle began exactly as Sarah had predicted it would.
Admiral Torvin Kai opened with a massive coordinated strike, expecting the human defensive force to crumble under the overwhelming firepower of 6 capital ships and their escorts. What he got instead was his first lesson in what humans could accomplish when they refused to accept defeat.
The quantum-stable matter enhancements that had been integrated into every human vessel didn't just improve their defensive capabilities. They fundamentally changed the nature of space combat. Shields that should have failed under sustained bombardment instead grew stronger, absorbing energy and redirecting it back at their attackers. Weapons that should have been outclassed by hegemony technology instead cut through enemy defenses like they were made of paper. Direct hit on the lead destroyer, Thompson reported from his tactical station. Their shields are down 60%. Sarah watched the engagement unfold on the main display, feeling a mixture of pride and anxiety as she witnessed the impossible becoming reality. The human ships, outnumbered nearly 2-1, were holding their own against the hegemony fleet. "Status of mining station defenses?" she called out. "All systems nominal," Martinez replied. "We're taking some hits, but the quantum enhancement is distributing the energy load across the entire station structure. Hull integrity is actually improving under fire." It was a phenomenon that still amazed Sarah, even after months of testing. The quantum-stable matter didn't just resist damage, it learned from each attack and adapted to counter it more effectively. After only 10 minutes of engagement, the station's defenses were twice as effective as they had been at the start of the battle. But Sarah knew they couldn't rely on defensive measures alone. The hegemony fleet was massive, and eventually even quantum-enhanced shields would be overwhelmed. They needed to take the initiative. "All network vessels, this is Phoenix. Execute attack pattern Delta." The 17 human ships that had answered the call to resistance suddenly broke from their defensive positions and accelerated directly toward the hegemony formation. To any outside observer, it would have looked like a suicide charge. What it actually was would become the stuff of legend. Each network facility had spent months not just enhancing their defenses, but developing new offensive capabilities. The quantum-stable matter had been weaponized in ways that the galaxy's military strategists had never imagined possible. Instead of simply firing energy beams or projectiles, the human ships were now capable of manipulating spacetime itself. "Quantum distortion torpedoes away," came the report from Terra's Pride. Sarah watched as the new weapons streaked across space toward the hegemony fleet. They weren't conventional torpedoes, they were concentrated packets of quantum-stable matter designed to create localized spacetime distortions on impact. When they struck, the target ship would find itself suddenly existing in multiple temporal states simultaneously, its systems confused by trying to process contradictory information about when events were occurring. The lead hegemony destroyer simply stopped firing. Its weapons couldn't lock onto targets that seemed to exist at several different points in time. Its shields couldn't protect against attacks that were arriving before the weapons that fired them had actually been triggered. "Impossible," came Admiral Torvinkai's voice over the open communication channel. "Your weapons are violating fundamental laws of physics." "No, Admiral," Sarah replied, opening a response channel. "Our weapons are using fundamental laws of physics that your species never bothered to explore. That's what happens when you assume one species is inherently superior to another." The battle was unlike anything that had ever been recorded in galactic military history. The human ships moved through the hegemony formation like hunters among prey, their quantum-enhanced systems allowing them to predict and counter enemy actions before they were even attempted. When a hegemony ship tried to fire, the human vessel it was targeting had already moved to a position where the shot would miss. When the hegemony ships tried to coordinate their attacks, they found their communications being intercepted and understood before they were even transmitted. KLTHYSS looked up from his monitoring station, his silver eyes wide with amazement. "Sarah, I'm reading confusion and panic from the hegemony crews. Their tactical officers can't understand how we're anticipating their every move." "Because they're thinking in 3 dimensions," Sarah replied. "Quantum-stable matter manipulation allows us to operate in 4 dimensions. We're not just predicting their next move, we're seeing all possible moves they might make and positioning ourselves to counter the most probable outcomes." It was the culmination of everything human intelligence had worked toward for 5 years. Not just better weapons or stronger shields, but a fundamental shift in how humans approached the concept of warfare itself. Where other species relied on superior firepower or advanced technology, humanity had chosen to use superior thinking. Two hegemony destroyers are withdrawing from the battle, Thompson reported. Their shields are failing and their weapons systems are offline. What about the dreadnought? Martinez checked his tactical displays.
Still engaging, but they're focusing all their fire on the station now.
I think they've realized the network ships are too difficult to target effectively. Sarah nodded grimly.
The hegemony dreadnought Absolute Authority was the most powerful ship in their sector fleet, and Admiral Torvenkai was clearly hoping that concentrated firepower could overwhelm even quantum-enhanced defenses.
All power to shields, Sarah ordered. Let's see how much punishment we can absorb.
The dreadnought's main guns spoke with a voice that could be heard throughout the station. Massive energy beams struck the quantum-enhanced shields, causing them to flare with brilliant light as they absorbed and redistributed the incoming energy. But, instead of weakening, the shields grew stronger with each hit. The quantum-stable matter was learning from each attack, adapting its defensive matrix to better counter the specific type of energy being used against it.
Shield strength increasing, Martinez reported, his voice filled with amazement. We're now at 130% of baseline defensive capacity. Return fire, Sarah ordered. Target their main gun emplacements. The station's quantum-enhanced weapons lanced out across space, striking the dreadnought's shields with devastating effect.
But these weren't just energy weapons, they were quantum distortion beams that attacked the target on multiple dimensional levels simultaneously. The Absolute Authority's shields flickered and failed as their defensive systems tried to process attack vectors that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Secondary explosions began to ripple across the massive ship's hull as quantum distortions wreaked havoc with their internal systems.
Admiral, Sarah transmitted to Torvenkai, your ship is critically damaged. I'm offering you the opportunity to surrender with honor.
Never, came the snarled reply.
The hegemony does not surrender to inferior species.
Then, you're about to learn why thinking of other species as inferior is a fatal mistake. Sarah nodded to Martinez, who activated the station's most powerful weapon, a quantum singularity projector that could create localized black holes in space. It was a weapon that should have been impossible to build, let alone deploy safely, but quantum-stable matter made the impossible merely difficult.
A tiny point of absolute darkness appeared directly in front of the Absolute Authority. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen.
Then, spacetime began to warp around the artificial singularity, creating gravitational distortions that pulled at the dreadnought's whole structure.
Warning, Sarah transmitted to the hegemony ship. You have 30 seconds to abandon ship before the singularity reaches critical mass. This is your final opportunity to save your crew.
Torvenkai's response was to order his remaining weapons to open fire on the station.
But the quantum-enhanced shields absorbed every shot, using the energy to strengthen their defensive matrix even further. 20 seconds later, escape pods began launching from the Absolute Authority.
Torvenkai might have been too proud to surrender, but his crew wasn't willing to die for that pride. The singularity reached critical mass exactly 30 seconds later. The hegemony dreadnought, the most powerful ship in their sector fleet, was compressed into a point of infinite density and, then, winked out of existence entirely. Absolute silence filled the communication channels as both sides processed what had just happened. A human mining station had just destroyed a hegemony dreadnought using weapons that shouldn't have been possible to construct.
All hegemony vessels, Sarah transmitted, her voice carrying across the battlefield. This is your final warning. Withdraw immediately or share the fate of the Absolute Authority.
The response was immediate. The remaining hegemony ships began powering down their weapons and withdrawing from combat range.
The battle was over, and humanity had won.
But Sarah knew this victory was just the beginning. Word of what had happened here would spread throughout the galaxy within hours. The Hegemony Council would be forced to respond, and their next attempt at suppression would involve forces that made today's fleet look insignificant. Captain Morrison, Sarah transmitted to Terra's Pride.
What's our status across the network? All facilities reporting successful defense, came the reply. The Hegemony tested our defenses at 7 different locations simultaneously.
In every case, they were driven off with minimal damage to our forces.
Sarah felt a surge of pride and relief. the network had held. Humanity had passed its first major test as an independent force in galactic affairs. Admiral Hayes, what's your estimated arrival time?
2 hours, came the reply from the approaching Third Fleet.
But, from what I'm seeing on our sensors, it looks like you didn't need the cavalry after all. We still need to discuss long-term strategy, Admiral. This was just the opening move in what could become a very long war. Agreed. Hayes out.
Sarah turned to address the command center crew, all of whom were staring at the tactical displays in amazement.
They had done it.
They had faced the full might of a hegemony fleet and emerged victorious.
Status report, she called out. All systems optimal, Martinez replied.
No casualties, minimal damage to station infrastructure. The quantum enhancements performed even better than our most optimistic projections.
Thompson looked up from his security console. I'm monitoring communications from the escape pods we picked up.
The hegemony crews are confused.
They keep asking how we develop technology that their most advanced scientists consider impossible. KLTHYSS moved to stand beside Sarah.
I have been monitoring communications from other species throughout the galaxy. News of our victory is spreading rapidly, and the reactions are interesting.
How so?
Many species that have been dominated by the hegemony for centuries are beginning to ask questions about their own relationships with the Council.
The Vegan Confederacy has announced they will be conducting a complete review of all their agreements with the hegemony.
The Centauri Republic is demanding access to quantum-stable matter technology for their own defensive purposes.
Sarah smiled.
This was exactly what human intelligence had hoped would happen. Humanity's successful resistance wouldn't just benefit humans, it would inspire other species to stand up for their own rights and freedoms.
There's more, KLTHYSS continued.
Several hegemony member species are privately expressing support for the human position. The Altarians have sent a coded message indicating they would like to open diplomatic channels.
The Betons are requesting information about our quantum-stable matter processing techniques. And the Zephyrians? My people have made their position clear.
We stand with humanity and any other species willing to resist hegemony domination.
The Council will no longer be able to count on our telepathic abilities for their intelligence-gathering operations. The implications were staggering.
The Zephyrian withdrawal of support would cripple the hegemony's ability to monitor potential resistance movements. Combined with humanity's demonstrated military capabilities and the growing unrest among other species, the Council was facing the first serious challenge to their authority in over 500 years.
Sarah, Rodriguez said quietly, what happens now?
We've won this battle, but the hegemony isn't going to simply accept defeat and walk away.
No, they won't, Sarah agreed.
This victory has bought us time and credibility, but it's also made us the primary target for everything the hegemony can bring to bear against us.
The next few months will determine whether humanity emerges as a true galactic power or gets crushed for daring to challenge the established order.
She activated the long-range communication array, preparing to send a message that would be heard throughout human space and beyond. To all human colonies, all network facilities, and all species seeking freedom from hegemony domination, the first battle has been won, but the war for independence has just begun.
Today we prove that courage and determination can overcome any technological advantage.
Tomorrow we begin building the future we want our children to inherit.
Sarah paused, looking around at the faces of her crew.
These people had risked everything for the chance at freedom, and their courage had inspired an entire galaxy. Today, humanity stops being anyone's junior partner. Today, we take our place as equals in the galactic community. And, tomorrow, we help any other species that wants to join us in that goal. The message went out across the galaxy on quantum-enhanced transmitters that couldn't be jammed or intercepted. Within hours, it would be heard by billions of beings on thousands of worlds. Some would respond with fear, others with hope, but none would be able to ignore the fundamental truth it represented.
The age of hegemony domination was over. The age of galactic equality had begun.
6 months after the Battle of Kepler 442b, as historians had begun calling it, Sarah stood in the council chambers of New Geneva Station, humanity's first independent diplomatic facility. The station itself was a marvel of quantum-enhanced engineering, built entirely with human technology and crewed by representatives from 17 different species that had joined what was now being called the Freedom Coalition. The past half-year had been a whirlwind of political maneuvering, military buildup, and technological advancement. The victory at Kepler 442b had indeed inspired other species to challenge hegemony authority, but it had also provoked a massive response from the Council. 3 major battles had been fought across the galaxy, each one demonstrating that the quantum-stable matter technology gave the coalition forces a decisive advantage over traditional hegemony weapons. But today's meeting wasn't about military strategy. Today, Sarah was about to participate in something that had never happened before in recorded galactic history, a formal negotiation between the Hegemony Council and a coalition of inferior species that had successfully challenged their authority. Agent Phoenix, came a familiar voice behind her. Sarah turned to see Kale THYSS approaching, his silver eyes bright with an emotion she had learned to recognize as excitement. In the months since the battle, the Zephyrian had become her closest advisor and friend, his telepathic abilities providing invaluable intelligence about their enemies and allies alike. Just Sarah today, Kale THYSS, she replied with a smile. The diplomatic protocols for this meeting specify that all participants use their actual names and titles. No cover identities allowed. Then, I should address you as Director Chen of the Human Intelligence Division, Kale THYSS said formally. Your promotion was well deserved. Sarah had indeed been promoted following the success of the network operations. Director Harrison had finally emerged from the shadows to acknowledge the division's role in humanity's independence movement, and Sarah now found herself heading the intelligence operations for the entire Freedom Coalition. Are you ready for this? Kale THYSS asked, gesturing toward the council chambers where delegates from 47 different species were gathering for the most important diplomatic meeting in galactic history. As ready as anyone can be for trying to negotiate with beings who have spent centuries believing they're inherently superior to everyone else, Sarah replied. What are you reading from the hegemony delegation? Kale THYSS closed his eyes for a moment, extending his telepathic senses toward the chamber where the hegemony representatives were preparing for the meeting. Anger, frustration, and, underneath it all, fear, he reported. They are beginning to understand that the old order is truly changing, and they don't know how to adapt to a galaxy where other species refuse to accept subordination. The doors to the council chamber opened, and Sarah took a deep breath. Everything that had happened over the past 6 months had led to this moment. The battles, the alliances, the technological breakthroughs, all of it had been building toward this chance to reshape the fundamental structure of galactic civilization. As she entered the chamber, Sarah was struck by the sight of so many different species gathered in one place as equals. The tall, graceful Altarians with their luminescent skin sat beside the compact, heavily muscled vegan miners. Delicate Andromedan scholars exchanged notes with fierce Centauri warriors. And, at the center of it all, human diplomats worked alongside their alien colleagues to prepare for negotiations that would determine the future of the galaxy. At the far end of the chamber, the hegemony delegation waited. Sarah recognized Admiral Torvin Kai among them, the hegemony commander who had survived the destruction of his dreadnought and spent the past 6 months trying to understand how primitive humans had developed technology that his species' greatest scientists considered impossible. The Hegemony Council itself was represented by 3 beings who embodied everything Sarah had come to despise about the old order. Counselor Vrextai, the same commander who had attempted to arrest her at Kepler 442b. Counselor THYSS Aaron, whose species had dominated galactic politics for over 800 years. And, at their head, Prime Counselor Zarathul, whose people had founded the hegemony and ruled it with absolute authority for over a millennium. Representatives of the Freedom Coalition, Prime Counselor Zarathul spoke, her voice carrying the weight of centuries of assumed authority. The Hegemony Council has agreed to this meeting as a gesture of goodwill toward species that have misunderstood their place in the galactic order. Sarah felt the tension in the chamber spike at the condescending tone. Around her, representatives from dozens of species struggled to control their reactions to being described as having misunderstood their place. Prime Counselor, Sarah replied, standing to address the hegemony delegation.
The Freedom Coalition appreciates the Council's willingness to engage in dialogue. However, we should clarify from the beginning that we are not here to discuss our place in any existing order. We are here to negotiate the terms of a new order based on equality and mutual respect. Zarathal's expression shifted slightly, a flicker of surprise crossing her features. Clearly, she had expected the coalition representatives to be more deferential. Director Chen, is it? The Prime Counselor asked. Your species has demonstrated remarkable innovation in recent months. But innovation should not be confused with the wisdom that comes from millennia of experience governing galactic affairs. Experience, yes, Sarah agreed. But experience at governing often becomes experience at oppressing. The Freedom Coalition represents 47 species that have decided they no longer require governance by those who consider them inferior. KLTHYSS leaned forward slightly, and Sarah caught his subtle signal. The hegemony representatives were broadcasting significant emotional distress. The concept of voluntary cooperation between equals was so foreign to their worldview that they were struggling to process it. Perhaps, Councillor Vrextai interjected, we should discuss the specific grievances that have led to this misunderstanding. Surely any legitimate concerns can be addressed within the existing framework of galactic law. Gladly, Sarah replied, activating the holographic display that dominated the center of the chamber. Let's start with the 17 illegal mining operations that were being conducted without the knowledge or consent of the species providing labor. The display showed detailed evidence from every network facility, documenting violations of interstellar law that went back decades. Mining operations where human workers were exposed to dangerous materials without proper protection. Manufacturing facilities where Altarian artisans were forced to create luxury goods for hegemony markets while their own people lived in poverty. Agricultural worlds where vegan farmers were required to export food to hegemony worlds while their children went hungry. These operations were conducted according to proper colonial agreements, Councillor THYSS Aaron protested. All labor was voluntary and properly compensated. Voluntary? The voice came from Ambassador Talon of the Vegan Confederacy, his muscular frame tensed with barely controlled anger. My people were told that refusing to work in your mines would result in the withdrawal of hegemony protection from our worlds. When the choice is between forced labor and annihilation, there is no choice at all. Similar statements came from representatives throughout the chamber. The Altarians described artistic traditions that had been commercialized and exported without permission or compensation. The Centaurians spoke of military service that had been presented as mutual defense but had actually been used to enforce hegemony control over other species. The Andromedans detailed scientific research that had been appropriated and classified to prevent primitive species from accessing advanced knowledge. As the testimonies continued, Sarah watched the hegemony delegation's reactions. They seemed genuinely surprised by many of the accusations, as if they had never considered how their policies affected other species. It was, she realized, the same blindness that had allowed them to dismiss humanity as a threat until quantum-enhanced weapons were cutting through their fleets. These allegations, Prime Counselor Zarathal said finally, will require extensive investigation to verify. The hegemony has always operated according to the highest ethical standards. The highest ethical standards for whom? Asked Ambassador Cyril of the Andromedan Alliance. Your standards have never included input from the species those standards were supposed to govern. Sarah decided it was time to present the coalition's real proposal. Prime Counselor, the Freedom Coalition isn't here to relitigate past grievances or to seek apologies for historical wrongs. We're here to propose a new framework.